Good evening, Bahamas. You're tuned into MB12 Weekend, broadcasting from Cable 12 Studios on Robinson Road. Coming up tonight in news, police investigating an early morning gunfight on Arawak Key. The former prison chief says shock treatment is nothing new. How government intends to manage a spike in web shops. Plus, government lawyers react to claims of the U.S. spying on Bahamians' phone calls. I'm Paige McCartney, and we've got those stories and more straight ahead on MB12 Weekend. Welcome once again to MB12. 7 people, including females, are in custody tonight after police say a gunfight broke out at the northern end of Arawak Key early this morning. The incident has left one teenager in critical condition in the intensive care unit at Princess Margaret Hospital, according to police. Officer in charge of the Central Detective Unit, Superintendent Paul Roll, said the fight took place at around 3 a.m. between groups of men armed with handguns. According to police, the culprits opened fire on a group of people, but even after they jumped into their cars, it didn't stop the shooters. Take a look at these vehicles riddled with bullets. The car windshields are shattered and their tires are blown out. In one of them, there are at least 15 bullet holes.
Sometime around, officers from Firearm Tracing and Investigation Unit, they were conducting routine patrol in the Arawak Key area when their attention was drawn to reports of gunshots being discharged in the vicinity of a local establishment on the northern side of the key. They went to investigate. Upon arrival in that area, they observed a group of males, several of whom were armed with handguns, engaged in gunfight. Upon seeing the officers, these persons began to disperse as the officers called for backup.
Roll said the shooters fled the area in 2 separate vehicles heading east on West Bay Street, leading police on a high-speed car chase that eventually ended in their capture.
They pursued a white Honda-type vehicle south along Nassau Street into the Augusta Street area, where they intercepted the vehicle eventually in the Ponciana Drive area. And they were able to take 3 persons into custody in this vehicle. The other police vehicle pursued the Jeep type SUV, I think it's a Nissan SUV, that continued east along West Bay Street into Princess Margaret Hospital, where upon arrival at the hospital they discovered that a 19-year-old male was suffering from multiple gunshot wounds to his body.
Crime scene investigators recovered a significant amount of bullet shells from the scene, according to Roll, who said police have still not determined the motive behind the early morning shootout.
We're not certain as to what was going on Arawak Key during this time of the morning, but we are going to be continuing investigation into this to try to bring some closure to this incident.
Now, police don't want this latest incident to frighten members of the public. Roll said police will be out in full force this holiday weekend so residents can feel safe moving about the island.
I do encourage persons to go about their normal business and to enjoy this holiday weekend. We are going to be about to ensure that persons are able to enjoy their weekends, and I would encourage those individuals who want to go about and make mischief to either stay home or go out and enjoy themselves in a decent way among decent people. Because wherever we find it, we are going to be out and about, and we would find some place to put them.
In other news, the Ministry of National Security's attempt to prevent crime by intervening in the lives of at-risk teenagers through shock treatment is nothing new, according to former Superintendent of Prisons, Elliston Ramming. Ramming, who now serves as Bahamas Ambassador to the United Nations and the Organization of American States, says, however, that the new form could be the breakthrough needed in the fight against crime. Ramming said the history of stamping out crime in the Bahamas through law enforcement is flawed. He said there cannot be a society where the home has failed, the church has failed, and in a matter of years it's expected the prison performs a miracle. The former prison chief said early intervention is key.
That may be what the minister has in mind by this shock program, as a way of getting into young persons as a preventive measure, as a preemptive measure. You know, should you continue down the path that you're going, this is what's in store for you. Young persons have always been able to go to the prison, walk through, look at the cells, but this is a new twist, perhaps with greater focus that has been brought to that question, and hopefully it will yield results.
Raming said successive ministers of national security have tried their best to bring about prison reform, but it's a complex issue. He said one cannot reform an inmate until he reaches a point where he's amenable to reformation. Nonetheless, Raming said there's a certain type of offender who's committed to a life of crime and cannot be helped.
It doesn't matter what you expose him to. Until he reaches that point, that breaking point, he's beyond reach. Now, the prison, fortunately, that group, that unreachable group, is in the minority. I believe the average inmate wants to do well. He may not know how to. He needs a support system around him and behind him and in front of him. And that's where the prison comes in, and that's where society comes in. And I think that I give the prison administration credit for not only continuing but adding to, because that's what new administrations are supposed to do, adding to what they found there and taking the prison to new levels.
The former prison chief said at the root of the crime menace is a feeling of hopelessness.
There are many reasons why young persons turn to a life of crime. Perhaps one of the greatest reasons is something that we tend to overlook, and that's hopelessness. There's a lot of hopelessness among many young persons in the Bahamas. They just can't see what's in store for them next week or month after next, and as a result, they become inventive and creative. And then you have this unchecked anger, unchecked jealousy, unchecked rage in some young people. So all of these things drive it into.
In other news tonight, as government prepares for web shop regulation, Tourism Minister Obi Welchcombe says he does have concerns about a potential proliferation of numbers houses in the country. Welchcombe told MB12 determining just how many licenses will be granted when the industry is regulated is the key question. But in the meantime, he confirmed the government has stopped granting further licenses until the businesses can be regulated. Dana Smith has more.
Welchcombe said determining how many licenses will be granted when the industry is regulated is the key question. But in the meantime, he confirmed the government has stopped granting further licenses until such time.
I am worried about proliferation. We don't want that. And that's why we have to bring some control to it, and that's why it has to be regularized. You can't have just a whole place full up with web shops. That's not what you want to do. You don't want to turn the country into a gambling country where everybody's in a web shop.
Welchcombe had announced in the House of Assembly back in March his intentions to bring legislation to regulate the web shop industry by July 1st. Debate on the gaming bill is set to begin after the ongoing budget debate. Welchcombe had announced in the House of Assembly back in March his intentions to bring legislation to regulate the web shop industry by July 1st. Debate on the gaming bill is set to begin after the ongoing budget debate. Welchcombe noted that since the government's announcement of impending regulation legislation, there has been a lot of applications for licenses. He said State Finance Minister Michael Halkitis has placed a temporary freeze on the granting of licenses until the industry is properly regulated.
We're putting controls. What Michael Alquitas did, which was the right thing to do, was you had to stop the licenses because they found a lot of people getting licenses and just opening up a shop. Well, when you are facing that situation, then you will end up with a very bad situation in the back end, because once the regulations are in place, then what happens? So we're going to put certain things in place to ensure inclusive of a number of the licenses that we're going to provide.
Welchcombe explained nearly everything is in order for the regulation of the web shop industry. He said the necessary preparations are in place, and so is the legislation. But determining just how many licenses will be granted when the industry is regulated is something that is still under discussion.
We feel quite good about the progress. Again, some questions are going to have to be answered, the number of licenses you're going to give, and I think that's going to be one of the questions that we're going to have to deal with. But you can't have 1 million licenses. So you're going to have to think about the licenses and can you survive in what will be a very competitive market.
Reporting for NB12 Weekend, I'm Dana Smith.
Well, Minister of Foreign Affairs Fred Mitchell confirming that government has filed a federal disclosure document through its United States lawyers, Hogan and Lavelle, in light of claims the U.S. National Security Agency is allegedly spying on mobile phone customers in the Bahamas. According to a statement released by the minister, the document was filed 3 days ago and is a routine filing on the U.S. Foreign Agents Act of 1938, which requires any firm who is representing a foreign government and will be working from time to time on matters with the U.S. Congress to register as such an agent. The law firm Hogan and Lavelle has represented the Bahamas for 41 years, according to Mitchell. The minister said he also discussed the matter with the Assistant Secretary of State for Western Hemisphere in the U.S. State Department, Roberta Jacobson, while at the meeting of the Organization of American States in Paraguay this week. He said the matter was dealt with frankly, directly, and firmly, and the United States government has indicated that it is still in the midst of an investigation into the matter and has further undertaken to provide answers. Mitchell said he will brief Parliament on developments into the matter of alleged spying when he contributes to the budget debate next week in the House of Assembly. Well, Labor Minister Shane Gibson is inviting social partners to submit recommendations to government for an increase in the national minimum wage before the end of the year. Gibson's charge came in his annual Labor Day speech. The minister said it is hoped that an increase in minimum wage will further contribute to the economic development of Bahamian workers. Gibson, who recently returned from Geneva, Switzerland, where he led the tripartite Bahamian delegation to the 103rd session of the International Labor Conference, said he expects the Tripartite Council will soon submit recommendations to government to amend the Industrial Relations Act and Employment Act to increase the statutory redundancy and severance entitlements of workers. Gibson said he also supports the establishment of a national redundancy fund from which Bahamian workers who are made redundant by dishonest employers or by employers who are unable to make redundancy payments will be able to access their statutory entitlements without delay. Parliamentarians recently debated and passed the Industrial Relations or Validation of Trade Unions Amendments Bill, which ensures that trade unions are compliant with the statute of laws of the country.